Okay, if I buy a top, it's $50, return it, I make $50.
Yeah, got math.
If you pay cash,
It's free.
so $400, right?
Yeah.
Standard hair extensions, great quality. We're talking 10 wefts of hair. Maybe a 28 inch.
28 inch, I'm
So we're going
feeling.
40 divided by 28 per inch. We're $1.40, baby.
You're $1.40 per inch.
If you've been on social media for the past 6 months, you've no doubt heard about girl math. On Urban Dictionary, it's defined as the fuzzy and funny logic used by female digital natives who proudly boast about not being born or blessed with the math gene to rationalize why they're getting a pretty good deal as far as their time, money and convenience are concerned, compared to those who think or act differently from them. And that's essentially what it is. The word rationalize is especially important in this context because to rationalize is to use logical reasons to justify unacceptable behavior motivated by unconscious impulses. Rationalizations are used to defend against feelings of guilt, maintain self-respect, and protect oneself from criticism. So by this definition, girl math is used to justify buying things that you probably know you shouldn't buy. But why do we need to rationalize our own choices? This is to prevent something called cognitive dissonance, which essentially just means an unpleasant psychological state resulting from inconsistency between two or more elements in a cognitive system. In this case, it's the inconsistency between the act of buying an expensive LV bag and the guilt connected to this act, because it could go against our fundamental belief values of not wasting money. So for this reason, rationalization is actually very important to prevent cognitive dissonance and make the buyer feel better, because coping with cognitive dissonance is mentally stressful. That's why girl math will make you feel better when you buy a $500 dress and justify it by explaining to yourself that it's really just $20 per wear if you wear it 25 times, using the ingenious cost per use formula. Let's take a look at some of the examples from earlier. Okay, if I buy a top for $50, return it, I make $50. If you pay cash, it's free. To explain this kind of thinking, we need to look at Richard Thaler's theory of mental accounting. Imagine 5 different jars in front of you. The first says housing, second says food, third is savings, fourth is clothes, and the last one is the fun jar. This is the jar where you put everything that doesn't fit in the other jars. According to Thaler, we mentally divide our money into these jars, just as if they were physical. Normally, you'd never mix them up, so if you needed clothes, you wouldn't take money from the food jar, and so on. So if someone spends $50 from the clothes jar, that money feels subtracted, so that if the person then receives a return of $50, that money is not going back into the clothes jar, but rather into the fun jar. Thus, the person will feel like he actually earned money. And because humans tend to simplify as much as possible, a lot of younger people view their bank account as their main wallet, and everything outside of that, such as cash or gift cards, is not a part of this mental wallet. One thesis found that in essence, once small denomination notes were removed from a savings account, it is essentially mentally spent. Next up are these two gems. I have to redo my wedding for $40,000, so my $400 hair extensions for that wedding feels free. If it's under $5, it's free. To explain these two, we have to turn to cognitive psychology and specifically Weber's law. So Weber's law is simple. The perception of something is determined by a constant and a reference stimulus and changes depending on the size and proportion of the two. So imagine a kid going to school with a backpack. If the backpack is empty and you place one book in the backpack, it's going to feel much heavier. If he already has 11 books and you place one more book on top, its impact is not as significant as if it was empty. If he's already carrying 100 kilos of books, how much does the next book have to weigh before he feels a difference? 1 kilo? 5 kilo? 10 kilos? Well, that number is called the just noticeable difference, or JND. So if the wedding cost $40,000, that's the reference stimulus, and the constant is $400. So because the constant makes up for such a small amount of the reference stimulus, the perception of the cost is going to feel insignificant. The $400 is not above the just noticeable difference, so it feels like nothing is spent. If the wedding was instead $500, the same hair extensions would feel much more expensive. In essence, this is the same that happens when things cost little money. If your reference stimulus is your monthly paycheck of $4,000, anything under $5 is not going to feel like anything because it's way below the JND. So what if something costs a lot, but there's a huge discount? Take a pair of shoes that were $2,000 but are now discounted to $1,200. Should you now feel like you're losing $800 if you're not buying them? Well, this way of thinking is called anchoring and adjustment. Individuals base their final price around an initial price that they adjust, but often not enough. The same shoes at $1,200 but without discount wouldn't feel as cheap. Moving on, we have: if I buy a concert ticket now in May, I will feel like it's free when I go to the actual concert in November. And if I buy this dress at $200 and I wear it 20 times, then I only spent $10 per wear, which is very cheap. In a 2006 study, Shafir and Thaler found something intriguing. At the moment of purchase, people tend to think of the ticket as an investment to be enjoyed in the future, and thus didn't feel like they actually spent the money. But then at the moment of consumption, when they actually attended the concert, they felt like it was free, because they already paid in the past. So this way of thinking is completely normal, but not very rational. The same applies for the dress math, where Shafir and Thaler found that 2/3 felt like they made a long-term investment to be consumed over the following months when they bought a $500 espresso machine, but didn't feel like they spent money when they were actually drinking the coffee. So by this logic, there exists some kind of dissonance. If people see the dress as an investment, they should also feel like they're spending money every time they use it, but alas, we are all irrational. Let's move on to the social perspective and ask, what drives people to spend so much money on unnecessary things? Well, of course, social conformity and normative influence is a big part. If everyone else is drinking that $10 vanilla frappuccino, it can feel really awkward to be the only one standing without one. In a study, people deliberately gave the wrong answers to a series of questions because everyone before them said the same wrong answer. So why shouldn't the same apply for coffee? This is related to the bandwagon bias. Imagine a literal bandwagon where all of your friends jump aboard, so naturally you do as well, because you don't want to feel left behind. And that's completely reasonable. Besides, a lot of students report that coffee is a chance for a mental break to deal with all the complexities of life. Corona, rising anxiety, inhuman rent, and a third sandwich and a giant douche fighting to lead the country are all part of modern life. So why wouldn't you spend the $5 to savor your mental health? This can, however, lead to poor economic behavior. Imagine feeling bad about spending money, so your defense mechanism is to spend more money, and thus an evil cycle begins. You spend $5 on coffee to consolidate yourself, because you feel so bad about spending $5 on your last cup of coffee. Lastly, there is one of my absolute favorites. Money isn't real, why shouldn't I buy that dress? And I agree.